The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the type that creeps under your skin, alerting your body that something is deeply wrong. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in a house that's supposed to be filled with laughter, football on TV, and the aroma of roasted turkey on Thanksgiving morning. I stood frozen at the doorway of the Rowan family home, my boots still dusted with snow, fingers still red from carrying in bags of groceries and wrapped gifts. The air inside the house was cold, not just physically, but emotionally empty. I dropped the keys on the kitchen island and called out instinctively, "Liam? Meredith? Gerald?" No answer. The only sound came from the old grandfather clock ticking faintly in the hallway and the hum of the refrigerator. That's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper, weighted down by a salt shaker. My name was written on the outside in Liam's rushed handwriting. I hesitated, heart pounding, and picked it up. The words were brief. Too brief. Gone on a Caribbean cruise with Chloe. Mom needed a break, too. You'll stay home and take care of Gerald. Be back Monday. Liam. My hands began to tremble, and for a second I thought I might pass out. The paper drifted from my numb fingers to the marble countertop. My eyes scanned the room again, desperately seeking a mistake. Some clue that this was a cruel joke. But then a low voice echoed from behind me. "He's not coming back until Monday, is he?" I spun around. Gerald was standing in the hallway, leaning on his cane. His eyes, startlingly blue, were far too alert for the image Liam had painted of a declining, dependent man. He looked at me steadily, then nodded, as though he'd expected this. "They left you with the dirty work, didn't they?" he said, voice raspy but sharp. Classic Liam move. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. All I could think was, they planned this. They waited until I was on my way here, then vanished with her. I staggered toward a kitchen chair and sat down hard. My breath came in short bursts. I tried calling Liam, straight to voicemail. Again. Still nothing. Gerald moved slowly toward the fridge and poured himself a glass of water with slightly shaking hands. "They left Tuesday morning," he said, flatly. "Didn't even stock the fridge properly. Hope you brought food." I brought pie ingredients. My voice cracked. "Cranberries. Sweet potatoes. For Thanksgiving. We were supposed to have Thanksgiving." He shrugged. "Thanksgiving's canceled, sweetheart. They've moved on." It was only then that I noticed the thermostat blinking, set to 62 degrees Fahrenheit. I reached to turn it up. Gerald gave a tired smile. "Don't bother. They said it's too expensive to heat the place fully this week." My stomach twisted. A man in his 70s with stage 4 cancer, shivering in his own home. Left behind like an old coat in the closet. I pulled out my phone again, desperate for a message, anything. Instead, I saw a notification from Instagram. I opened it and my breath caught. A photo, bright and filtered. Liam, smiling on the deck of a cruise ship, arms slung around Chloe Benton, the coworker I had always suspected. Champagne in hand. Caption, "New chapter begins. Caribbean sun and family fun. #thankful, family fun." I wanted to scream, but instead I turned the phone toward Gerald. "She's not just a coworker," I whispered. "They're on a cruise together." Gerald didn't flinch. "She's been around for months," he said simply. Pretty voice. Terrible laugh. My throat burned. I looked at this man, this stranger really, and saw something I didn't expect, recognition. He had been discarded, too. The house I thought I was returning to for warmth and family was just a cold, hollow stage set for betrayal. Then Gerald said something that changed everything. He leaned forward, tapped his temple, and murmured, "They think I'm fading, but I've been keeping track of everything." And then, with a ghost of a smile, he repeated the words I hadn't understood the first time. "Shall we begin?" I stood at the sink, staring at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. My hair was windblown, cheeks flushed from the cold, but it was my eyes that unsettled me, wide and wet, blinking against disbelief. Behind me, Gerald moved with deliberate care, placing two mismatched mugs on the table. "It's just instant coffee," he said. "That's all they left." I sat down wordlessly. The kitchen was a mess. Empty takeout containers in the trash, mail piled up unopened, a sour smell lingering in the air. This wasn't the home I remembered from years of polite holiday dinners. This was a shell, neglect made visible. I opened my banking app. My thumb hesitated before logging in. It was almost like I already knew what I'd find. The account Liam and I had been saving in for years, for our future home, was nearly empty. A withdrawal for $5,200 had been made 3 days ago. The memo line said cruise deposit. My throat tightened as I turned the screen toward Gerald. "He took everything," I said hoarsely. "Everything we saved. It was for a house. He promised we'd start looking after the holidays." Gerald didn't blink. "He took from me, too," he said, voice calm in a way that made it hit harder. "They've been doing it for years. Small withdrawals, justified with excuses. It's for your care, Gerald. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in a cold house eating canned soup and delaying medications because they're out of budget." I looked at him, really looked, and noticed things I had missed before. The thinness of his frame, the way his sweater hung loose around his shoulders, the quiet effort it took him to stand. And yet his mind was steady. His clarity was painful. "Your medications delayed?" I asked. He nodded. "They pick up the cheap ones. The pain meds, they ration them. Tell the doctor I'm doing fine. And if I ask questions, I get silence." My stomach turned. I'd been so focused on my own betrayal that I hadn't seen the deeper cruelty layered underneath. This wasn't just about a ruined holiday or even infidelity. This was planned abandonment of both of us. My phone buzzed suddenly. I snatched it up, hopeful, foolishly, but it wasn't Liam. It was Leah, my best friend, texting Happy Thanksgiving with a little turkey emoji. I stared at the screen, then quietly turned it face down. I couldn't explain any of this yet, not until I understood it myself. Gerald stood slowly and walked to a side drawer. He pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook and handed it to me. Inside were neat lines of handwriting, dates, dollar amounts, doctor's appointments that had been mysteriously canceled, and notes about medication skipped. "They think I don't notice," he said, "but I've been keeping track." I flipped through the pages, shocked by the precision. It wasn't just a man documenting care, it was a man building a case. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, cautious, but my voice was softer now. "Because you've been wrong too," he said simply, "and because I don't have time. I've got months left, maybe less, but I don't intend to spend them watching Elaine and Liam toast their new life while we freeze in the dark." I stood motionless for a moment. Part of me still wanted to believe there had been some mistake, that maybe they'd come back, apologize, explain. But I knew better. I'd seen the champagne, the hashtags, the smiles that didn't include me. Gerald was right. "They left us behind," I whispered. "They did," he said. "But they forgot something," he pointed to the notebook. This is our beginning. You think they left you with a burden. They didn't. They left you with me." I looked down at the ledger again. Pages of numbers and names and cruelty written in pen. Something inside me, something slow-burning and unfamiliar, began to stir. "Then let's do something with it," I said. "Let's do something they'll never forget." Gerald smiled. And this time, it wasn't tired or bitter. It was sharp. "You're not just a guest here anymore, Natalie," he said. "You're a witness. And maybe you'll be the one who finishes what I started." I stood in the grocery store, staring at the half-picked-over holiday aisle, surrounded by strangers scrambling to salvage their own Thanksgiving plans. My cart held only the barest essentials: a small turkey breast, a sack of potatoes, a few fresh herbs, and a frozen pie crust I didn't really want but couldn't leave behind. I moved like a ghost through the aisles, barely registering the jingles overhead or the warmth of the store after the cold house I had come from. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, and again I ignored it. I didn't need anyone else's happy Thanksgiving texts, not when I had just been abandoned by the man I married and the family that once pretended to accept me. When I returned to the house, Gerald was at the table, a folder of papers in front of him, the same kind he'd shown me earlier. "You're serious about this?" I said quietly, setting the groceries down. He looked up. "I don't start what I don't intend to finish." I unpacked the bag in silence, laying out the ingredients with care. There was something therapeutic about washing vegetables, chopping herbs, prepping the turkey. My hands knew what to do, even when my heart felt like it had been torn apart. The kitchen began to fill with the scents I had expected that morning: rosemary, garlic, melting butter, and for a moment it almost felt like a holiday again. As I stirred the mashed potatoes, Gerald cleared his throat. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "Most people would have left." "I almost did," I replied, not turning around. But then I realized something. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. He nodded slowly. "They think they've won, Natalie, that they've moved on, but they left the wrong people behind." I glanced at him. His eyes weren't just sharp, they were angry. Not with the kind of fire that burned fast and loud, but the deep, steady kind that smolders and waits. Dinner was ready by 4. We sat at the small wooden table in the corner of the kitchen. There was no fine china, no centerpiece, no wine. Just roasted turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, green beans with lemon zest, and silence. A silence that wasn't uncomfortable, but resolute. After a few bites, Gerald leaned back slightly, savoring a forkful of turkey. "Haven't had a home-cooked meal since spring," he said. "Liam brings fast food when he bothers to visit. His mother usually just orders takeout and complains about her back." "They said she needed a break," I muttered. Gerald gave a dry laugh. "She needed a break from pretending to care." We ate in silence for a while longer. The food wasn't extravagant, but it was warm, real. And maybe that was all either of us had wanted today, something real. When the dishes were done and the leftovers packed away, I sat down across from him again. "Tell me more," I said, "about what they've done. I want to understand everything." He didn't hesitate. Liam started small. Gaslighting mostly. Little lies. Forgot appointments. Moved money around. Said it was for my good. Meredith, well, she's always been Elaine's shadow. They justify everything. "You're lucky we even keep you at home," she once said. "Can you believe that?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "I can." Gerald's mouth tightened. "It's not just neglect. It's theft. Manipulation. They've been setting the stage for this for years. Making me seem weaker than I am. Telling people I'm confused. That I forget things." "Do you?" I asked. He looked at me directly. "Sometimes. But not what matters." I believed him. Later, as the evening light faded into blue-gray shadows, Gerald handed me another folder. Inside were bank statements, medication records, and a printout of emails Elaine had sent on his behalf without his consent. "I need someone sharp," he said. "Someone who can organize this, make it undeniable." "I'm a designer," I replied. "I've built case decks for corporate lawsuits. I know how to tell a story." "Good," he said, "because that's exactly what we're about to do." He pushed a worn manila envelope across the table. On the front, written in blocky capital letters, was a single word: "Will." I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I looked at him and said, "If we do this, we do it all the way." Gerald's lips curled into something that was almost a smile. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Outside, the night settled thick and quiet over Boulder. Inside, the heat finally clicked on, set not to 62 degrees, but 74 degrees. Not just for comfort, but because for the first time all day, we weren't surviving. We were preparing. The next morning, the sunlight filtered through the kitchen window like nothing had changed, but I'd slept on the couch, blanket pulled up to my chin, mind spinning all night. By the time I opened my eyes, Gerald was already at the table, wrapped in a knit cardigan, sipping lukewarm coffee. In front of him lay a thick folder marked medical. "I figured we should get this part over with," he said without looking up. "If we're going to do this, you need to know everything." He slid the folder toward me. Inside were test results, scans, a specialist letter. Words jumped off the page. Pancreatic adenocarcinoma, stage 4, palliative care only, life expectancy 2-3 months. My throat tightened. I'd known he was sick, but this? "You've known this long?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. 3 months, he replied. And they knew. Liam and Elaine were there when the doctor told me. 2 days later, they started planning that cruise. I pressed my hands against the table, steadying myself. "And they just left you?" "They didn't just leave," Gerald said. "They adjusted, cut my medications, lowered the heat, started asking about my will." I stared at him. "That's abuse. It's not just cold, it's criminal." Gerald nodded. "That's why I've been keeping receipts. And why I called my lawyer the moment the cruise tickets were booked." He stood slowly, motioned for me to follow him into a small back room. Once an office, now converted into a sick room. In one corner sat a twin bed with thin blankets. In the other, a hospital bed, still wrapped in plastic. "I refused to use it," he said. "They pushed for hospice, wanted me bedridden. Easier to ignore that way." From a locked drawer in his desk, he pulled out another folder. Bank statements, emails, voice memos, photos of neglected prescriptions. And at the bottom, a single deed to the house. "They think they're inheriting this," Gerald said. "But I've had this home under a trust since before Elaine even moved in. It's not theirs." My eyes widened. "Does Liam know?" "He suspects I have something squirreled away, but he doesn't know I've been documenting everything." He walked back to the kitchen slowly, his breathing heavier than it had been yesterday. I followed, carrying the folders like sacred evidence. "You're tired," I said. "There's no time to rest," he replied. "Not if we want this to mean something." I called Leah, finally, and asked if she could help discreetly. She worked in social services and had friends in elder advocacy. Within hours, I had numbers, names, even a contact at a nonprofit focused on elder financial abuse. She'd seen too many cases like this, but rarely this well documented. Around 1 p.m., Patricia Winters arrived, Gerald's attorney, tall, severe, and dressed in charcoal despite the warmth of the day. Her sharp green eyes scanned me from head to toe. "So you're the wife they abandoned," she said, without a trace of judgment. "Yes," I said, steady. "And I'm not going anywhere." Patricia nodded once. "Good." She laid out a precise legal plan. A new will, asset transfers into restricted trusts, medical power of attorney, and letters to be signed before a notary. Gerald signed each with a trembling hand, pausing only to ask that certain charities be added to the trust. "Elder abuse prevention," he said. "Something real." When it was done, Patricia looked at me. "We'll need evidence of his condition. The family may contest everything." "I can stage it," I replied. "Photos, documentation. I studied visual storytelling. I'll make it real." Gerald looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Something close to awe. "They thought they left me with weakness," he murmured. "But they left me with you." The next few hours blurred into movement. We staged the room. Oxygen tank, saline drips for lines, all non-functional, all for show. I used makeup from my college theater days to hollow Gerald's face, accentuate his eyes. He looked devastatingly ill. I took photos. Him in bed, me slumped beside him, hospital sheets pulled taut. The lighting was dim, the effect haunting. Every image told a story of suffering and abandonment. "Who gets these first?" I asked. "Melissa," Gerald said. "Liam's sister. She's the only one who texted since they left." I typed out a message. "Carefully. Victor had a rough night. Fever spiked. Trying to manage pain as best we can. We'll keep you posted." Attached a photo of him pale and shivering. Her reply came in minutes. Oh no. Poor Uncle Victor. I'll tell Liam. I think. Gerald smiled faintly. Hook set. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves danced in spirals down the driveway. Inside, in the glow of a staged hospice room and the quiet click of legal documents, a new kind of holiday was taking shape, not of gratitude, but of reckoning. We weren't just waiting anymore. We were preparing to be heard. By Saturday morning, the house had transformed. What was once a space of quiet resentment and neglect now resembled a hospice care unit. Grim, sterile, staged with meticulous care. Gerald lay in bed wearing a nasal cannula hooked up to a non-functional oxygen tank. His complexion had been made sallow by gentle makeup tricks, and I'd dampened his hair to give him the sheen of fever. But the eyes stayed sharp. He was not dying yet. Not really, but we were going to make them believe he was. You ready for your close-up? I asked lightly, lifting my phone. More than ever, Gerald replied. Let's show them what they left behind. I snapped photos of everything. The hospital-grade sheets, the tubes, the pills lined up beside a worn bottle of water. In each image, Gerald looked thinner, weaker, nearly translucent under the low light. Then came photos of me, eyes red, face blotchy, curled up in a chair beside the bed in an oversized cardigan, looking utterly exhausted. I set up a shot of me spoon-feeding him applesauce, his hand trembling in mine. They'll eat this up, I muttered, not without bitterness. Gerald smirked. So will the court. Next came the calls. I left voicemail after voicemail on Liam's phone. His fever won't break. The hospice nurse is worried. Please call me back. I really need your support. Each message grew more desperate. Gerald recorded every one. By noon, I'd crafted an elaborate digital medical log. Fever spikes, pain episodes, hallucinations. Backdated entries created the illusion of long-term decline, all with timestamps and fake clinician initials. Patricia would later say it was better than most hospital records she'd seen. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it to find an elderly woman holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. Edith Peterson, she said crisply. I live next door. Heard Victor might be, well, declining. Thought you might need a warm meal. My surprise must have shown because she raised an eyebrow. You're the one they left to care for him, aren't you? I nodded. Natalie. I'm Liam's wife. Or was. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Everyone on this street knows how that family operates. Victor deserved better. Always said that boy was nothing but his mother in disguise. We talked over coffee, and Edith's words tumbled out like coins from a full jar. Memories of Gerald being left in the yard after a fall. Lights off for weeks during winter. Elaine hosting parties while Gerald sat alone in his room. You call that caretaking? She snorted. Please. My Harold had better treatment in hospice, and he paid for it himself. When she left, she promised to tell the neighbors what was going on. And by the end of the day, 5 more people came by. Some brought food, others just memories. One neighbor even handed me a photo she'd taken months ago. Gerald outside in a robe, retrieving the mail alone in the snow. By evening, I had a dozen statements, a photo archive, and 6 written testimonies describing Gerald's condition and the family's absence. One elderly neighbor wept as she told me how she once heard Gerald coughing for hours in the night and no one came. That night, as I placed a warm blanket over him, Gerald whispered, Do you see what you've done in 2 days, Natalie? I looked at him, confused. You made me visible, he said. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, the weight of it all pressing against my chest. Later, as I tucked the statements and photos into neatly labeled folders, I realized what this had become. It wasn't just a plan. It was a prosecution. And when Liam and Elaine walked through that door, expecting to find a dying man and a grateful wife still clinging to scraps of love, they'd find something else entirely. They'd find the evidence of everything they thought would be buried. Sunday morning dawned with a strange stillness in the air, the kind that usually comes before a storm. I brewed coffee quietly while Gerald rested in his chair by the window, wrapped in a blanket, but eyes alert, focused. Today was the day we'd close the last loops, the final pieces of legal defense, and the last bait we needed to set the trap. By 9 a.m., Patricia returned, dressed in slate gray with a thick leather folder in hand. "We have 2 hours," she said calmly. "The notary's on his way." Gerald nodded, determined. "Then we get it done before I fall apart." We moved into the study. The oxygen tank, though fake, wheezed faintly in the background. Patricia laid out the revised estate documents, the full asset transfer to me as trustee, the disinheritance clauses for Liam and Elaine, the legally binding allocations to elder abuse organizations, and a final letter of intent. "You're sure about all of this?" Patricia asked as the notary arrived. Gerald took a moment, breathing slowly. "I've never been more sure of anything." They made their choices. Now I'm making mine. He signed with a slightly shaking hand. The notary, a kind man named Thomas, notarized every page without comment. When it was done, Patricia turned to me. "It's ironclad," she said. "Even if they try to fight it, the evidence is overwhelming. They'd lose everything in court, and then some." As if on cue, Gerald's phone buzzed. A video call from Melissa. He looked at me. "Showtime." I prepped the room, the bed with its clinical staging, the drawn curtains, the tray of untouched meds. I mussed my hair, dabbed redness around my eyes, and coached Gerald one last time. Shallow breathing. Small answers. No eye contact until the end. I answered the call. Melissa's face appeared, sun-kissed and relaxed, until she saw mine. Oh my God, Natalie, you look awful." "Thanks," I said flatly. "It's been a hard few days." I angled the camera toward Gerald, who lay with an oxygen cannula under his nose, eyes half-lidded, mouth slightly parted. He murmured weakly, "Melissa?" She leaned closer to her screen. "Uncle Victor? It's me. We're coming home tomorrow. Are you okay? Do you want me to call Liam?" I kept my voice neutral. It might be good if they came early. "We're not sure how long." Melissa hesitated. "I'll talk to Mom. The thing is, the cruise tickets weren't refundable, and she's just been so stressed." My stomach turned. Gerald's eyes closed slowly, as if he couldn't bear to hear it. "I'll call back after lunch," Melissa added quickly. "Please keep me posted." I ended the call and turned off the camera. "Got it all," I said, lifting the second phone that had recorded the entire conversation. Gerald sat up and removed the oxygen line. His face, though paler than yesterday, was alive with something sharper than pain, cold satisfaction. She didn't even ask how I was feeling, just whether I'd make it to Monday. "Do you want me to call them again?" I asked. "No," he said, firm. "They've made it clear where their loyalty lies. Let them return to the wreckage." That evening, as the light faded behind the Rockies, Patricia helped Gerald record his final statement. He sat upright in bed, dressed in his best sweater, his voice clear. "To my family," he began, "I will likely be gone when you hear this. Not that my presence ever made much difference in your plans." He spoke of the neglect without rage. Just facts. Missed medications. Conversations about his death as if it were a transaction. Isolation. Manipulation. Theft. The greatest pain, he said, is not death. It's discovering that those you loved most considered you disposable. Patricia, standing beside the camera, blinked rapidly but didn't interrupt. When the recording ended, Gerald looked at me. "Do you think they'll watch it?" "Oh, they'll watch it," I replied. "They just won't be able to unsee it." And we weren't done yet. There was still the letter, the one that would be read after. It happened quietly, sometime after midnight. I had fallen asleep in the chair next to Gerald's bed, still dressed in black, with Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep open on my lap. The room was lit only by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. I don't know what stirred me, a shift in the air, maybe, but when I opened my eyes, I knew. Gerald's chest had stilled. His hand, always so firm even in weakness, now rested like paper over the blanket. I placed my hand over his. It was cool. No last words. No dramatic sigh. He'd simply let go. Tears came, quiet at first, then with a grief deeper than I had expected. For days, that's all we'd had. And yet in those days, he'd seen more of me than Liam ever had in 6 years of marriage. In those days, he had given me more trust than anyone in my family. More than that, he'd made me believe in my own strength again. By 3 a.m., Diane, the hospice nurse, had arrived. She confirmed what I already knew and helped arrange for a private mortuary to collect the body. He looks peaceful, she said softly, like someone who got the last word. He had. By 6 a.m., I'd made the necessary calls. Patricia, the funeral home, the florist that agreed to take a last-minute order. The service was held at 9 a.m. that same Monday morning under a gray Denver sky at a small chapel not far from the house. It was modest. No choir, no procession, no elaborate readings. Just those who had mattered in the last chapter of Gerald's life. Edith and her husband Harold, a retired banker named Miles who'd worked with Gerald for 20 years, Patricia, Thomas the notary, and me. I read a short eulogy. Nothing grand, just the truth. He was seen and he was heard, and in the end he was believed. After the service, we returned to the house. I changed into a fresh black dress, tied my hair back, and began the final preparation. I placed Gerald's letter in a cream-colored envelope and leaned it against a framed photo of him, alone, smiling gently on the porch in the spring light. Around it, I arranged the evidence files, folders labeled neglect, financial abuse, medical discrepancies, and voicemail transcripts. Nearby sat a flash drive containing his video testimony. The house had been staged with cold precision. On the television, paused and ready to play, was the video recording Gerald made the day before he died. In the dining room, I laid out the cruise photos printed in large, glossy format. Liam and Elaine in swimsuits, raising champagne glasses, all time-stamped during Gerald's final days. Everything they ignored was now documented. Everything they thought they buried was about to speak. At exactly 11:03 a.m., I heard car doors slam outside. Voices laughing, bags rustling. Liam and Elaine were home. The door burst open. "Honey, we're home." Liam called cheerfully, sunglasses still on, his arms full of duty-free bags. Elaine followed, dragging a designer suitcase across the tile, and behind them came Melissa, her tan lines sharp, her hair still damp from the ship's spa. And then Hannah, the work colleague. She stepped into the foyer with a wary glance, clutching a souvenir mug that said Sun, Sea, and Second Chances. Their voices, so loud, so full of vacation glow, cut through the silence like a blade, until they saw me, standing by the mantel in a black dress, arms crossed, eyes steady, mouth silent. Liam froze. Natalie. His gaze flicked around the room. "Where's Gerald? Is he napping?" Elaine stepped forward. "Why are you dressed like that? What's going on?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Gerald passed away Saturday night. The sound of souvenir bags hitting the floor was oddly satisfying. Elaine's expression twisted. "You're joking." "No," I said. I held his hand as he slipped away, quietly, peacefully, while you were toasting piña coladas. Melissa went pale. "I told you he looked really bad. I told you. You knew." Elaine snapped. "I sent the message." Melissa cried. "She said he was deteriorating. Why didn't you listen?" "Brady, no, Liam, tried to step closer to me." "Wait, you didn't wait for us? You held a funeral without his family." I looked him dead in the eye. "His family was invited. You just never answered the phone." I turned slowly, picked up the envelope from the mantel, and handed it to Elaine. "He left this for you. You might want to sit down." They filed into the living room like ghosts at their own funeral. No one dared take Gerald's rocking chair. It stood like an accusation. I remained standing as Elaine opened the envelope and unfolded the letter with trembling hands. I watched their faces. I wanted to see it happen in real time. The shame, the disbelief, the dawning horror. Gerald's words, written in his precise hand, cut like razors without ever needing to shout. You left me cold, forgotten, like an expired bill you didn't feel like paying anymore. I heard you say you were just waiting for the inheritance. Natalie, who barely knew me, showed more compassion in 4 days than you did in 4 years. Melissa burst into tears. Elaine clutched her pearls like they might stop the truth from sinking in. But it was Liam who flinched the hardest when I pressed play on the video. Gerald's face filled the television screen, pale, lucid, steady. To my stepson Liam, who learned apathy from his mother and cowardice from the mirror, Gerald said, voice calm as glass. You stole from me. You lied to me. And you left me to die alone. Except I wasn't alone. She was here. Elaine rose to her feet, furious. This is a setup. He was confused. This is elder abuse, manipulation. Actually, I said, motioning to the hallway, we have witnesses. The doorbell rang. Right on cue. Patricia stepped in, Thomas, the notary, behind her. Calm, precise, impeccably documented. As executor of Gerald Harmon's estate, Patricia announced, placing her briefcase on the coffee table, I'm here to formally notify the heirs of the contents of his final will. Liam stood up, trying to regain composure. Let's get to it, then. I'm sure this can all be settled. Indeed, Patricia cut in. The entire estate, including liquid assets, investment accounts, and the deed to this home, has been left to Natalie Mitchell. Elaine's scream was a mixture of rage and disbelief. What? She's not even family. She is, Patricia said evenly, in all the ways that matter. The will is valid, witnessed, and accompanied by medical records confirming Gerald's mental clarity. The inheritance has already been transferred into secured trusts beyond legal challenge. Melissa gasped. What about the college fund Grandpa promised us? Patricia didn't flinch. That fund was given to Liam to establish years ago. It was never opened. The money is gone. Melissa turned slowly to her brother. You stole it. Liam didn't answer. He didn't need to. Elaine turned on me, face twisted with fury. You manipulated him. You took advantage of a dying man. No, I said, stepping forward, voice low and firm. You abandoned a dying man. I just gave him someone to trust. Then I opened the door, letting the morning light pour in behind me. I pulled my suitcase to the threshold, placed my wedding ring on the console table, and dropped the keys beside it. You get nothing, I said quietly. Not the money. Not the house. Not me. Liam stumbled forward. Natalie, please. We can fix this. I made a mistake. I didn't even look back. You didn't just make a mistake. You made your choice. And so did he. As I stepped into the sun, I could still hear Elaine's wail inside, a sound no designer scarf could smother. The house that once held their future now held only the proof of their failure. And as for me, I walked away without fear, without debt, without shame, only the peace of knowing I had helped someone find dignity in their final days. And in doing so, I found mine too.